Hey you guys! In this video, we will explain how to install the linear rail kit from Creality on our Ender 3 Pro. You want to know more? Then stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Rui and this is the Rui Raptor YouTube channel. If you want to help us out, you can by giving this video a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also help by joining our Patreon page or by clicking on any of the affiliate links posted below in the video description. So, if you want to install linear rails on your printer, there are different ways to do that. You can buy the rails and make parts to adapt them, or buy a kit with all the parts needed. One of those kits is this one from Creality for the Ender 3 Pro. One of the differences between the Ender 3 and the Ender 3 Pro, and which makes this kit not compatible with the Ender 3, is the Y-axis. On the Ender 3, you have a 20x40 profile on the Y-axis, while on the Ender 3 Pro you have a 40x40 profile. If you have an Ender 3 instead of the Pro, you can still use this kit, but only for the X and Z axis. For the Y axis, it would require some modifications. This kit includes all the parts necessary and a few extras. With the kit, we have 4 300mm long linear rails. These seem to be in very good shape and with no play. The Y-axis carriage has a couple of holes for an end stop flag and the 4 holes for the linear rail installation. Together with all the parts for the linear rail installation, this kit also includes a BL Touch sensor. Also includes an extra probe for the BL Touch and an adapter. This adapter is only used to connect the BL Touch on the older 8-bit boards that don't have a dedicated leveling sensor connector. If you have one of the newer 32-bit boards, you don't need this adapter. Okay, now let's start the installation. Make sure you have your printer switched off and with the power cord removed. And start by taking the top horizontal profile out. Next, disconnect the X-axis end stop, the X-axis stepper motor, and the extruder stepper motor. Then, we need to remove the entire hot end, so unscrew the 2 screws that secure the cover. Be very careful while handling these components to avoid damaging the wires. Next, remove the 2 screws that secure the hot end. We recommend to take the PTFE tube out from the extruder to make things easier later on, so pull it out, or if it's easier for you, carefully unscrew the pneumatic fitting. Now we can take the X-gantry out. So, turn the coupling to raise the gantry all the way up and take it out. Now it's time to remove the heat bed. Rotate the 4 leveling knobs clockwise all the way to remove them. Careful with the bed springs, don't lose them. Next, remove the 4 screws that secure the Y-axis idler. Loosen the belt and remove it from the Y carriage. Move the Y-axis idler out of the way and slide out the Y carriage. This one you can store it. You will not need it anymore. Since the power supply is attached to the back of the right vertical profile and one of the linear rails will be installed on the side of that profile, there's not enough room for both. We need to install these 2 shims between the power supply and the vertical profile. We also need the 2 M4x30 screws, so remove the 2 screws that secure the power supply, then install the 2 shims and use the new screws to secure the power supply. Now we have the necessary gap between the power supply and the vertical profile. Now, let's work on the X-gantry. We will have to disassemble almost everything, but don't worry, we will do this step by step. Start by removing the X-axis idler. Then, remove the right Z carriage. To remove the X-axis carriage, unscrew and remove the bottom wheel. Next is the left Z carriage. At the back of the carriage, there are a couple of holes you can use to insert the Allen key and unscrew the two screws. Take the profile and the belt out, and keep them close because you will need them soon. Now, we need to take the plates apart. Unscrew the 3 screws that secure them and the wheels. Next, remove the lead screw nut. You will need these later on as well. Then, take the extruder out. Start by the lever side. Be careful not to lose the extruder spring. And then, unscrew the remaining 3 screws to remove the extruder. The extruder and stepper motor will also be needed, so keep them close by. Next is the X-axis stepper motor and end stop. To disassemble these, you first need to remove the sticker, and then unscrew the 4 screws. Now, let's start to put everything together. Start with this plate, the X-axis stepper motor and the end stop. Place the stepper motor underneath and with the connector facing up. Because of the X-axis rail, 4 spacers will be needed, together with 4 longer screws and 4 washers. So, remove the stock screws and insert the new ones with the washers. Then, place the spacers and install the end stop on top of the spacers. Make sure the end stop is facing left. Next is this other plate and the 2 long spacers. Both plates need to be aligned this way. Okay, so take the 2 old screws that you had for the wheels and use them together with the new spacers. Place the new plate and secure everything with a couple of old lock nuts. But don't fully tighten them just yet. Check the alignment of the plates. Most probably they will not be aligned, so temporarily we can use the 2 M3x6 screws that are used to secure the BL Touch sensor and the 2 M3 lock nuts. They will help to align the 2 plates in place. Okay, with the plates aligned, we can now tighten the other screws. Once that is done, we can remove the M3 screws and lock nuts. Next is the lead screw nut. Install it, but don't fully tighten it just yet. The gap you have on the lead screw nut will be useful to align when installing the lead screw. Next is the extruder stepper motor and the extruder. Place the motor with the connector facing right and the extruder with the pneumatic fitting thread facing left. Next is the lever. Place the spring and then the lever. Careful not to over-tighten the lever screw. Make sure it can move correctly. Now let's install back the profile. Locate this side of the profile and attach it to the left Z carriage plate like this. The screws are the old ones, and it's easier if you place the two screws first and then carefully attach the profile. You can use the openings from the top plate to access the screws. Then we have the right Z carriage plate. This one is installed on the back of the profile like this. Same as before, you need to use the old screws. Okay, we are ready to install the first linear rail. For all of them, you need the M3x8 screws and T-nuts. Place the screws inside the slot, and at the opposite side, give a couple of turns on the T-nuts. On our kit, there were not enough screws to fill all the slots on all 4 rails. In fact, you don't need to use that many screws, but we used all these for each rail. Align the T-nuts and place the rail on the right side slot of the Y-axis profile. Make sure the rail is perfectly centered and parallel with the profile, and then tighten the screws. On the Y carriage, we need to install the end stop flag here on these 2 holes, so take the 2 M3x10 screws and the 2 lock nuts you temporarily used a few minutes ago for the Z carriage and install the flag with this orientation. And then install the carriage on the rail. Make sure you have the flag on the right side. To secure all the carriages, you need the M3x8 screws. Make sure the carriage is parallel with the rail. Then install the belt at the back. And finally, at the front. Adjust the tension and secure the idler. Once that is done, make sure the belt is not touching the rail. Next are the Z rails, but before installing them, get a bit of tape and secure the carriages. This will keep them from falling off the rail. Place the first one on the left side and install it at a distance of no less than 20 mm from the top edge. With the kit, we get an alignment tool that we need to use to help centering the rail on the profile. Don't forget to use the tool on both ends of the rails. Move the carriage and the tape down so you can tighten the remaining screws. Next, do the same for the right rail, but in this case, install it very close to the edge of the profile. Try to give just a small clearance between the edge of the rail and the edge of the profile so that it does not hit the horizontal profile when we install it later on. Okay, now we can install the X-gantry. Carefully place it at the top and align the lead screw with the lead screw nut, and then rotate the coupling to lower the X-gantry. Drop the X-gantry at the bottom, and before anything else, we need to install the top horizontal profile. But don't fully tighten it just yet. Get a square and make sure that both vertical profile faces are aligned between each other, and that the distance between them is the same at the top and at the bottom. If not, you need to correct this before moving on to the next step. To adjust, you need to loosen the screws that secure the vertical profiles on the bottom of the printer. Then tighten the screws on the top horizontal bar and secure the left carriage to the rail. Once the left side is done, do the same for the right one. But on this one, you need to check if it fits correctly, or if there is a gap between the rail and the carriage plate. If yes, then you need to fix the gap first. To do that, and from the back side, loosen the screws that secure the right plate on the horizontal profile, and then slide the plate against the rail. With the gap eliminated, you can tighten back the screws on the plate and secure the rail to the plate. Next, tighten the screws on the lead screw nut. Don't forget to move the gantry up and down a couple of times to make sure everything is moving correctly. Last but not least is the X-axis rail. Place it at the front of the X-gantry profile, but make sure you leave a gap between the rail and the edge of the profile no bigger than 18 mm. As before, use the alignment tool and tighten the screws. Next is the X-axis carriage plate. Make sure the plate is parallel with the rail. Now, get the belt, pass it over the X-axis motor gear, and secure it on the plate cutout underneath. Make sure the belt passes from the top and not from the bottom. Then install the idler at the right side, but don't bother with its final position just yet. Just install it as far to the left as possible. Pass the belt around it and secure it on the carriage plate. In our case, the belt didn't reach the belt slot. While inspecting the old plate and the new plate, we can see that the cutouts were made a few millimeters in on the new plate and this way making the belt short. If you have this issue, you have two options. One is to make new cutouts on the new plate or get a longer belt and install it. We decided to go with the longer belt, and we used zip ties to secure the edges. If you decide to use this method, make sure the zip ties correctly secure the belt. With the belt installed, adjust the tension and secure the idler. Now, take the heat bed and install it on the new carriage. Don't forget the springs in between, and then the leveling knobs. Before you can start your first sprint, you will need to level the bed and also move the Z end stop up a bit. To level the bed, you can check our other video where we explain the best techniques to level it. With the heat bed installed, carefully move it and check if you have clearance between the bed and the left rail and also the power supply screws at the right. And we are almost there. Take the hot end and install it on the new X-axis carriage plate. Make sure it's perfectly vertical. And then the cover. If you plan on installing the BL Touch sensor, you will need to add the BL Touch mount over the cover. The BL Touch installation we will cover in a different video, so don't miss it. Now, pass the cable and connect the extruder stepper motor, the X-axis stepper motor, and the X-axis end stop switch. And install back the PTFE tube. If you decided to unscrew the fitting, carefully screw it back, and at the end, make sure it's secure. Okay, and the installation is now complete. But first, let's check a few things to make sure everything is okay. As we said, because of the rail, spacers had to be installed so that the X-axis end stop could reach the new carriage. Move the carriage all the way to the left and check if the switch is triggered correctly. Also, make sure that the flag can trigger the Y-axis end stop switch. With the rail installation, you lose some amount of printing area. On the Y-axis, the print head is shifted 20 mm to the front, and instead of 235 mm, you now have 215 mm on this axis. On the X-axis, the nozzle is shifted 5 mm to the right, but it can reach the edge of the bed on the right side. So you have a total of 230 mm on the X-axis. The right Z-rail is installed at a higher position when compared with the left one, because Creality designed the right carriage plate so that it secures the rail 30 mm higher when compared with the left side plate. The Y-axis rail also elevates the print bed a few millimeters, which makes the total Z-travel 240 mm. These differences in the X, Y, and Z travel, and also the Y-axis offset, need to be modified in the firmware, so you need to update the firmware to do that. Also, because of the elevated Y-axis carriage, the angle of the belt is not the best. Same thing happens with the X-axis belt, but here we think that is possible to improve with a redesign of the X carriage plate. As for the print results, and if you have done all your adjustments and calibrations correctly with the stock wheels, you will not notice much improvement with the rails. There are some advantages and disadvantages with a linear rail system when compared with the stock wheels. One advantage is that if the rails are good quality ones, they provide better precision and don't require adjustments. The disadvantage is that this system will make more noise while moving and will require more care and frequent maintenance. Taking parts out from the print pad must be done more carefully, especially with kits like this that only have one rail on the Y-axis. Also, maintenance must be done more frequently. making sure that all the rails are well greased. And that's it, you guys. Thanks for watching. We will see you guys next time. Bye!